Yellow Line live stream. Ben is with me in person. He's real. So, that's cool. The gang's kind of here. And then Adam couldn't be here with us in person today, though, but he's here with a guest of his own. We got Teddy. Teddy's going to be joining us tonight. We love Teddy. We have so many different mascots of this brand. We have Daisy. If you know my social media, we have her there. And then we have Ted. And then Merida, Dom's dog. So, but if you don't know us, my name is Taylor. This is Above the Yellow Line. We talk about NASCAR all day long, every day. We have an exciting weekend. Ben and I will be at Mid-Ohio with Rob Branning, who will not be joining us tonight, kind of covering the action from in person. And then, of course, the Xfinity Series and Cup Series will be at Atlanta, so we'll talk about that too. At around 7:20, we'll have a special guest with us as well. We have so many guests today. Stephen Conley will be joining us. Talk about his career. He is one of the announcers at Mid-Ohio, so he'll be talking about that, previewing it with us. But we have so much to talk about, especially with Chicago. So I guess we'll get into it. I guess overall thoughts. How did we feel about this race at Chicago? And of course, just want to note this too. If you're in the comment section, first off, we are so glad you were here. And leave your thoughts about Chicago in the comments. We can talk about it. Any questions you have, let us know. And then the top left of your screen is a QR code. Scan that to find more of where we're at and other ways to support our work. But I guess I'll throw it to Adam. What did you have overall thoughts on Chicago? Kind of the first thing that pops to your head.
All right. So last week, as I stated on the show, I had zero hope for the show, but as the week went on, the momentum started gaining, which I think this is going to be good. I think this is going to be good. Oh my gosh, it was awesome. It exceeded all of my expectations. It had a little bit of everything. It had a little strategy, had a little bit of weather, had a little bit of darkness threatening, and we got a surprise winner, which really shouldn't have been that big of a surprise given SVG's background. So all in all, I would give it a solid 9 out of 10 this weekend. The weather could have been better, but it did add for some excitement.
Ben?
So I thought between the two races, because I'm going to compare two races, I thought Xfinity cars kind of struggled there. I don't think they were the most interesting.
I can agree with that.
And I think I've said it before in here. I think the best road racing in NASCAR right now is Xfinity cars on road courses. Just they are incredibly fun to both watch and drive on iRacing as well. So I think the Xfinity was kind of a bummer. I really wish that they could have finished it, but I understand why. Adam, I'm kind of the same with you in that I kind of didn't have any, as he disappears. He's back. I kind of didn't have any excitement, and then I think it was Wednesday at work. Our sports director, Keith is his name. He's been a NASCAR fan through a little bit of his life and hasn't followed recently. And he was talking to me. He was like, "Dude, they're on a street course this week." And I was like, "Yeah." And I explained to him. He's like, "That's really exciting. I'll have to tune in." And I was like, "Okay, I'm starting to get excited for it too." And then, thankfully, they got everything in with the rain. I think NASCAR deserves a tip of the hat for how they handled this, because they could have easily just either called it or started it completely wet, and they waited it out. And whatever deity you believe in gave them a break in the rain. They were able to get the slick or wet tires on and go out there and run. I thought the racing was good for the most part. The strategy was fun. It felt kind of like a Formula One race, and the whole when are we switching from wet tires to dry tires, that was a cool little change in the exchange over there. SVG took him to school.
Yeah.
That move with Justin Haley near the end of the race where Haley's holding the inside line going towards, I think it's 3. And he just
the crossover move.
He just let him do it. Like because I knew the moment Haley was on the inside wall, I was like, he's not making the corner.
Yeah.
Like he locked him up, and SVG just blew by. Really cool, really great to see. I think you're seeing the repercussions of this. The fans that this sport has been brought to now.
Yeah.
Are you talking about your stats? New Zealand is up like 20% of the video viewing.
Yeah. So the video from ATYL that we did on Monday, I put out on Monday. Literally, I texted in our group chat, and about 39% of that audience from that video was from New Zealand, and about 26% somewhere in there was from Australia. And I'm like, oh my God. And we got a whole bunch of new subscribers. So if you're one of those subscribers, hey, good to see you. But just how big this was for the sport, that we have people from over there that are now, whether they've joined into just our outlet or even just other NASCAR outlets or NASCAR as a whole, like that's a really big deal. Mm-hmm. And of course, Shane racing in Australia right now and from New Zealand, like that's a big deal to have that in the sport. So I think it was good. The racing, I think Cup Series, that was fun. It was chaotic. Mm-hmm. But it was a good time. Then, of course, I would agree with you guys. Xfinity was probably the lesser of the two, which I didn't expect. I almost thought Xfinity would put on a better show because, like Ben says, I think it's some of the best racing road course rides. So I was expecting that to translate over to street courses. I saw in the comments, Heather, you said, I did not like the way the cars run at Chicago. And I think if we go back next year, we'll improve on the product. Kind of like we saw with a really big example here and totally different, but with Bristol Dirt. First year was awful there. Not even just straight up. It was bad. But as we kept going back, we learned how to make the product better, the track better, the cars better to handle that situation. And I think as we keep going to street courses, because I'm telling you, I mean, I'm sure this is not the last street course we're ever going to go to. And if anything, this just grows that idea. We're going to make the product better. But I think right now the Gen 7 car struggles with its road course product and its short track product. And that's something that they're continuing to work on. I know Adam in the comments here, he basically predicted from the start that SVG was going to win this, and totally right all the way through. So like, that's really, really cool. But I think overall, just, it was a success. And there's so many people talking about the sport now, like Ben, you alluded to, that otherwise haven't. Like, I mean, even my cousin, she lives in Chicago. She couldn't go to the race because of all the flooding. Everything was shut down. She couldn't find transport to get there. But so many people have asked me about it too. That's just crazy. Adam, I don't know if you have the same thing in your life.
I actually, my cousin who just recently graduated from Miami of Ohio, another Ohio shout out.
Hey.
She just moved to Chicago last weekend, and she texted me and said, "Hey, are you watching the race? I'm glad I didn't move this weekend."
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's cool to see that there were like eyes even in my family, because I'm kind of the outlier of my family when it comes to watching racing, believe it or not. I'm the few, the proud me. So yeah, just hearing another family member mention just NASCAR in their vernacular, that was incredible.
Yeah.
And something I will say as well, I will call myself out here. I have a very narrow scope of motorsports that I watch. I'm just starting to get into IndyCar, which, by the way, if you haven't like seen the video on my experience that I did, I was able to be a guest of Steinbrenner Racing in the Andretti Autosport group. That was awesome to be able to go to Mid-Ohio and have that. So just starting to get into IndyCar. Of course, I've seen some of Formula One before, but my focus, as you all know, is NASCAR. That's our focus here with the brand. But when SVG won this race, I was like, okay, now I kind of wanted to get into like supercar scene, getting into different types of racing. So not only is this big for just the perception of us and the reception of the audience across the pond, but for us here, it should hopefully open our eyes to different types of racing. Just because with SVG, I mean, for me, he's a kind of fun personality, seems like a really cool guy. So I want to kind of follow his path, his career. And we also know, if you guys didn't catch this in his post-race interview, he was like, I have one more year in Australia, and then maybe I'll race here. So we could potentially see him back in NASCAR next year, which I think would also be big for the sport, right? I would say so.
I think it would almost be like the 2000s when we had the influx of open wheel drivers, the Juan Pablo Montoya situation, where we got a bunch of international fans to at least see us, maybe not follow us. But I feel like the times have changed, and that if we get another international talent just because of the product we have now, I think we could maybe capture that lightning in a bottle and hold on to it a little longer.
Yeah. And I will say too, with just Project 91 in general, I mean, the whole goal of that is to get drivers from different disciplines and different motorsports lives and parts of the world, getting them into a stock car to see how they do. And every time I've been pretty impressed. And then of course, this time they win. And so my whole thought process is, all right, who do we have in there next? Who do we want to see? Because I mean, I feel like that seat now, knowing that it's a race winning car, is probably going to be a hot commodity. I don't know if you guys, we've talked about this before a while ago, but if we have new ideas as to who we want to see in that seat, maybe.
I feel like the obvious answer.
Go ahead.
Ricciardo.
Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
Daniel Ricciardo. Here's what I want though. I would love to see Sebastian Vettel at Watkins Glen.
Yes. I would love that.
I know he won't do it. I know he's basically retired and kind of trying to drop off the grid, but I would love to see Sebastian Vettel. And a name that I'll throw out there, Carl Edwards. And the only reason I'm saying this, hear me out. If you listen to, it's been like a year or two ago, Dinner with Racers podcast, they interviewed Justin Marks. And in the interview, Mark says he flew to Missouri and talked to Edwards. He physically went there and talked to Carl. And so and Carl's been at the track more. Apparently he's been running sim. So like, I feel like, I don't know if it'll happen, but I feel like there's like a possibility that Edwards could be like, hey, put me in a Charlotte road course or Charlotte Oval or whatever, just for funsies. You never know.
I think it'd be fun, obviously, to have Ricardo. I think everybody would love to see that.
Yes.
But I want to see Scott McLaughlin.
So bad.
He'd be fun.
Get him or even Joseph Newgarden. Get someone from IndyCar and do the full blown crossover. Let's give it a shot.
I think even Austin Cindric, I think he referenced Scott McLaughlin in his post race interview too.
He did.
So so I think that'd be really cool to see. I'm thinking too. I mean, obviously this would never happen in a million years, but if we could get like a Lewis Hamilton, if he would somehow, or even like Max Verstappen, that would never happen. But
I was about to say that, Taylor. Yeah. You know, he likes watching NASCAR like all the time.
He does. So
he was screaming at the screen apparently when Shane won. So that's big kudos right there.
So I mean, I think the bigger names we get into this, the better, and even to just boost NASCAR's global appeal, which is also big. Phil, oh my God, hello. First off, we love you and adore you. Phil says Carl has been doing sim for Joe Gibbs Racing, so I think he's doing the 67. That's fair.
I wasn't really love that. Also, if I may make a suggestion for the Trackhouse Project 91, let's go ahead and get Marcos Ambrose back. Get the band back together.
Yeah.
Why not?
Get them back in
the
lab.
not? So I mean, there's
if we're getting the band back together, let's bring Danica Patrick back for a one-off.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? Might as well. Anything's possible.
I would love to see drivers that have not been obviously it used to be like Gen 6, Gen 5, whatever generation car. And NASCAR try the Gen 7, and I just want to hear how different it is from them. And obviously, we hear it from our drivers because they went from Gen 6 to Gen 7, but just someone who's been out of the seat for a while, how different the feel is. I would love to hear that analysis. Like, that would be so interesting to me. Let's see. John, you said Lewis Hamilton has said he wants to give NASCAR a try, anything that's possible. Honestly, if nobody's reaching out to him or there's not an active conversation right now, that would shock me because I remember hearing him say that in an interview at some point or even just online or something. So,
well, I know like even Max Verstappen has said, I feel like he said at some point that he will get tired apparently at some point before we want to try other things. So now does that mean necessarily NASCAR? I don't know because I have seen him in IndyCar lobbies on iRacing. So anything's possible.
You never know, honestly.
It'd be cool just to see Red Bull back in NASCAR. It's a dream I have.
Another Ben in the comments. Ben, we love to see you in the comments as well.
There's only one Ben. I'll find you.
I can see Lewis in the 2311 67 car. I think too, and something. What am I trying to say here? I like that 2311 is also kind of doing this idea with the Project 91 car, but they're kind of making it their own thing. It's getting different voices into the sport, getting different people. And like I said, NASCAR's global appeal. We have the NASCAR Le Mans entry, which was major. Maybe seeing next year on the schedule, I don't know. We'll see it in September, I guess. But are we going to have another international race? I mean, it'll probably be like a Canada or Mexico situation, but like, are we going to get out of the United States to do something a little different, starting to expand ourselves again? So I mean, anything's possible. Silly season as well coming up. I mean, that'll be crazy. Didn't think it would be crazy this year, but it's going to be. And then also just seeing who lands in one of these cars, in the Project 91 or even that 67 car.
I mean, they got Koshiba, I believe. I apologize that not have names on.
Kamui Kobayashi.
Thank you. They've got him for Indy Red Course in the 67, which is a banger scheme as well.
Yes.
But like, it's fun to see these guys come into the sport, and I know we rank the Gen 7 over Coles right now in a lot of ways, but I think it's a good car for this reason that you have guys like SVG that can hop in it and drive it, and Koshiba can drive it now. And I'm sure if you put Lewis Hamilton in it, it's probably pretty similar to an F1 car in some ways that like you could figure it out. So it's good. Like it's good to have this diversity and this easy acclimation to the sport now. So.
And with that too, I mean, we always kind of talk about Trackhouse and how impressed we are with them, but even just 2311 as well. I mean, we talk about them a lot too, but the way they're innovating the sport for me is really exciting. Just I feel like for so long we've been so closed off, and because it's like we want to keep the sport like centered to its roots, and now NASCAR's trying to expand these teams like 2311, Trackhouse. They're looking to broaden NASCAR out a little bit, and I really appreciate that. And they're trying something new. Their marketing also is really cool. I adore it. So all in all, I think good things happening. If we go back to Chicago next year, I kind of hope we do. I thought it was really interesting, and hopefully the weather gets better. But even like Ben said, NASCAR was dealt an impossible situation this weekend. And they did everything they could with it, with the workers and the staff that they had, with Mother Nature, whenever she just decided to just kind of give up and give us a nice day. So that was good. I don't know if we have any other closing thoughts we wanted to mention about Chicago.
If we don't go back to Chicago, I would be okay still having a street course somewhere that's going to do the exact same thing that the Chicago street course race did, was bring a new audience, new eyeballs to our sport. So I'm okay with it coming back or not coming back.
Yeah.
If it doesn't come back, let's hope it comes back somewhere else.
Yeah.
I hope we go back to Chicago. I know there's the whole thing about the mayor that got elected after Chicago became a thing. And has been against it. I would love to see Chicago back. I would like my friend Jackson went, and he took photos and he loved it. I had my coworkers at work. They know, like everyone knows I'm the racing guy at work, and that's fine. And my two coworkers were like, "Did you watch the street course race this week in Chicago?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, they asked me, "How did it go? Like, how was it?" I was like, "This is one of the best races I've seen in a long time." Like, people are asking me, my friends in Chicago, like, saw me post about it on Instagram, like, "Hey, like, if you're up here next year, like, let us know. We'll let you, like, crash our place." And stuff. And I want it to happen again in Chicago because it has the resources to do it. My friend Jackson was like, "I took the train. I didn't have to drive. I didn't park. I didn't pay for parking." And he's like, "I don't know if I've never done that at a race ever." So I think hopefully Chicago, let's happen again. But I'm hesitant on just because I know the mayor situation, obviously, but if not Chicago, like Cleveland Airport, bring that back. Because now we've shown we can build a small track in a stadium. Now we can build a big track in a city, but that means we can build a track anywhere.
Right.
So I like if it's the Vegas parking lot or the Miami parking lot or whatever. Like, this shows we can do it.
The possibilities are endless, and what's so cool too is people. I think there was so much hesitancy around this race. I've shared my hesitancy on every live stream I've done so far, but I was always like, "We're going to wait and see." We all have already commented like, "Hey, before this race, I was not hyped for it." And then as the week went on, NASCAR, the marketing team, everyone did such a good job hyping it up. I think the drivers as well, posting on social media, everything they did to hype up this event was also really cool too. They also had like McDonald's activation stuff and Grimace there, and I was really jealous. That's like
Happy birthday,
cool.
Grimace.
Happy birthday, Grimace.
Happy birthday, Grimace. Thank you, Grimace.
It was literally one of the coolest things in the world, and just even if you still are against the Chicago Street Course race, I get it, that's fine. But I think a lot of us gave it a good chance, which I think is good, and I'm excited to hopefully go back or do something else. But
sorry, I saw Ben's comment in Broad Street in Philadelphia. That would be incredible, but there'd be
gosh,
Philadelphia fans would lose their minds, man.
Yeah. Possibilities are endless. I will say too, before just closing this out as well, I think Chicago was also a good choice because you still had that crowd from Chicagoland a little bit. So it was a risk to do a street course. Fair enough, but you had an audience you could kind of rely on that's been itching to have a race a little bit closer to them still. So that all said, closing out the Chicago Street Course race. I'm sure we'll talk about it like a few weeks from now still, because it's one of those races that you just want to keep talking about. It's so memorable. It's so fun. Phil also said I had a customer at work who saw my desk with my NASCAR stuff, and first thing he asked was about the street course. See, there we go. It's new eyes, and it's the most viewership that the broadcast has had in 6 years?
It's like 9 million people.
Yeah, crazy. So
like Daytona 500 old numbers. It's insane. Exactly. That was wild.
And the sport needs more of that. But that Chicago Street Course, our guest is here. So we'll bring in Steven to just kind of talk through his career, and we'll let him introduce himself to you. But here we are. Right. Steven, thanks for joining us.
Hey, guys. Good to be.
Awesome. So
I'm trying to get my headphones and make sure all the sound is right. I don't want you guys hearing yourselves.
You're good.
Man, that's professional. He knows his audio.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate that.
You know, it's kind of ironic that you mentioned that, the professional knowing his audio, and I don't have a microphone that hooks up to my my iPhone right at the moment. So here I am just working off the basics.
I will say, Steven, I just literally Amazon today have a microphone. I just bought a microphone to go into my phone today. So we're same page there.
We should be good.
Should be good. Perfect. So Steven, for those who don't know you, in the comments that are watching, tell us just kind of the brief synopsis of who you are and what you do.
Well, I have done a little bit of everything over the last 15 years of motorsports coverage. I started out as a photographer. I'm still a photographer. Spend most of my time covering NASCAR, IMSA, and IndyCar for the podium finish, as well many know. I've spent time working with the Performance Racing Network, not on air, but I was doing some of their reporting and coverage for stories for Mark Garrow for his shows that he did during the week. And now I've just started, this is my second year working with the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course as one of their turn announcers. So a little bit of everything. I do radio for a living. I write, I take photographs, and now I'm joining you on a podcast.
Well, we're excited to have you and talk through it. I think the first question I have for you, because I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this before, but getting started in radio, have you ever been told you have a voice for radio and that's how you got into it? Or how did that side of your career begin?
You know, I've been told that. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm told that on a daily basis. I hear that every day. So my start in radio actually came back in high school in 1991. They had a closed circuit in-school radio station where we would do news and stuff at the high school. And I got on there, and then it went just from there up. And I started working at some local stations, helping out. And then I started full-time with an overnight show back in 2008 for a local country radio station. And then I've been at a adult contemporary station as a DJ and a production manager, promotions director, all of that for my current station I've been at for the last 6 years.
In working your way kind of up the ranks in radio, I guess, how was that for you? And like, did you ever think you would want to work as kind of a producer?
I did, actually. And because I enjoy the behind the scenes, I enjoy the creativity of getting things to stand out and helping sell. I could never be a salesperson because, in all honesty, I don't take no very well. And if somebody says, well, I can't really afford that, I'll be like, okay, I'll give it to you for free. I'm that kind of person. So, but creating the commercials and creating the promotions and the things that really kind of stand out, using all the sound effects and getting different voices, I love that aspect. It is a lot of fun. So I tried to go to college for it. I went to college in 1994 and 95 at Kent State University for broadcast journalism.
Nice.
Unfortunately, I ran out of money. And in all honesty, I can't. I see some fingers pointing like, yeah, I get that.
I did journalism school for 3 years and changed majors, so I get it.
Yeah, it's tough because they don't teach you what you truly need to know. And I have been told from some of the biggest sports names in reporting across the country, as well as right here on our own sport. Alex Hayden, the host or the anchor from Motor Racing Network, told me many years ago, he said, you do not need a college degree to do this. And I found it to be true. I've learned more on my own than I ever did in a college classroom.
I will say, Steven, in case the viewers don't know this too, I interned with the Podium Finish last summer, and Steven was the one that kind of took me on my first trip to the track to actually report in person. And I feel like, kind of going off that sentiment there, I learned more from you than I think I learned in like 2 semesters of college.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just how I think the journalism programs work, and it's one of those fields where you have to be in person learning. So I definitely agree with you on that there. I did want to ask too, in terms of radio, like, is there a favorite call that you've had when you've been on the radio, or is there like a favorite memory that you can think of?
There's, and I'm sure you hear this, you'll hear it from drivers too. There's so many great memories that we have. It doesn't matter if it's in radio or if it's driving a race car or if it's working in TV or whatever the case may be. There's so many of them. But I will say that 2 weeks ago, I had my first working with the Vintage Grand Prix at Mid-Ohio. They had 24 races over 2.5 days. And we had one that brought in a lot of stock cars. So Rusty Wallace's 1988 or 89 Miller Lite Ford or Pontiac was there. And the guy that was driving that was fast all weekend. And they were about halfway through their race, and they were talking about, as it came down through turns 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, that they were starting to see a little bit of smoke. And as it came by me, just as it got in front of me, this thing went up in flames. And it was just like, the Miller Lite Pontiac has gone up in smoke. A call we've seen from Rusty Wallace many times throughout his career, and this time it is heading to the garage. So it was something similar to that, but getting able to throw Rusty Wallace's name in there, Miller Lite, and even though it was at a vintage race at Mid-Ohio, it was still a very cool moment for me. But I've had a lot of other ones in other sports and football and things like that.
In talking about like 24 races in 2.5 days, and even just throwing in some of the references to NASCAR, like how did you prepare for something like that with all the teams? Like how do you do it?
Honestly, I didn't. I had my entry lists, and the thing is, those entry lists for those vintage Grand Prix races and everything that they had, they changed literally at the time of the race. So you may have an entry list and you may have for 18 cars and only 6 cars are on the racetrack. So that was probably the biggest challenge that I have ever faced as a broadcaster of any type, was having these names that you didn't know. And we had some Formula 2000 cars out there. So we had a lot of European names that were racing, and give you a little bit of a funny story. As one of the cars was coming through, we were talking about it being one of the fastest cars on the track. And I can't remember the guy's name, but I said, as he comes to me, he's been fast all day long, continues to be fast. He's pulling away, blah, 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 is leading. Because his name, the end of his name kind of was like Blob, B-L-O-B. And I couldn't pronounce it, and I stumbled over it, and I was just blah, blah, blah.
My God.
So you have moments like that. So some of those you really can't prepare for. IndyCar, I could prepare for that. I knew it a lot more. You know the paint schemes, you know the drivers. So the bigger names, bigger events, you know that. But I'll tell you, the biggest challenge as an announcer, especially for motorsports, is when you get into an IndyCar race or any other race, they have their first caution on lap 1, and it's caution free the rest of it. Half the field is a lap down during caution flags, and you're trying to figure out who's on the lead lap, who's racing who, as they're coming over a blind corner, which is where I have to call races from in turn number 9. They come up over the hill, and I have a half a second, maybe a second, to try to figure out who's in front and who's not.
Yeah, covering the IndyCar race, I'm curious, we haven't talked about this together, but how was that for you, especially just Alex Palou just thinking up the show?
Well, you know, from the time we had the first practice for IndyCar for the Honda 200, Alex Palou, as soon as he got on the track, everybody was talking about it. He was the odds-on favorite. Drivers were talking, this is probably going to be his race. Now, him starting, I think he was in 5th or 6th position. Took him a little bit to get to the lead. But once he got there, through cycles of green flag pit stops, tire strategies, reds versus blacks, he was just gone. But it may not have shown on TV. There was a fair amount of good racing in the back. The problem being is one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about was lap cars. And Benjamin Peterson was a big issue in the IndyCar race. And unfortunately, we had to talk about that a lot. Even as the announcers for the track, the radio coverage and TV coverage was talking about that a lot. So a lot of the focus, unfortunately, was taken off of Palou's dominance because of that, but it gave us more to talk about throughout the rest of the race.
And then kind of just switching gears, because I want to jump back to radio when we kind of preview Mid-Ohio for Trucks and ARCA, but photography. Like, so I want to talk about this with you. So what the camera you shoot on, it's a Canon. Remind me the type of camera you shoot on again.
I shoot on a Canon 1DX Mark II. That's pretty much the leading brand for sports photography, leading camera over the last couple of years until they started going mirrorless, which that's a whole nother conversation for another day.
Oh yeah.
Lumex.
We got Sony Lumex over here. trying to get into photography. So is it like the brand loyalty then? Have you always been with Canon?
No, actually, when I first started, I was shooting Nikon on one shoulder, Canon on the other.
Oh, there we go. All right.
I've had many people tell me that that's what they used to do as well. So
it just a camera is a camera. It's just like it's a tool, and it's just like your hammer. You can use a hammer to hammer nails, or you can use a sledgehammer to hammer big nails. So as long as you know how to operate it, you're going to get the shots. And it was fun for me to actually learn both brands. And when I hear people argue one is better than the other, and I'm like, I shot with both, and they both work.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it really is. I mean, but for me, I've become Canon loyal because I've invested the money into the rest of the equipment.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the camera photography equipment, as I've learned, and I'm just starting out with doing more like photography work too, it's not cheap. So It's definitely an investment for sure. And also for your photography too, and I see you posting all the time. And it's so impressive. Like, where's your favorite place to shoot at? Like, do you have a favorite track that you always go to and you're like, man, like best shots come from here?
Well, after spending time in Atlanta has become one of my favorite tracks to shoot. I love shooting there, especially as it gets later in the day. And one of the shots I shared last year, it was from the spring race. It was from the Xfinity race, and the sun started setting right behind turn number 2. Ooh. And it was cloudy. It was just blue. It was purple. It was orange. It had all the colors. And in fact, I shared the shot, and Parker Klingerman has saved that shot since. So that has become one of my favorites. I love Atlanta.
I think I have that saved on my camera on my phone right now. That picture too. It is gorgeous.
A lot of people have commented on that one. It is definitely one. I submitted that for the NMPA last year for photo awards. It did not win, but hey, what can you do? But Mid-Ohio, I love shooting at Mid-Ohio because there's so many different angles.
Yes.
Road courses truly are the most joyful thing to shoot at. A lot of people don't like it because you got to walk. But you can get so many different angles. You can shoot in so many different locations. There are more locations than you have laps to shoot.
Right. I think when I was when you were trying to show me the ropes with photography at Mid-Ohio last year, I only stayed on one side of the track. But as I walked around for the IndyCar race and kind of got to explore a little bit more, I was like, oh my gosh, I could have shot from here and here like all last year. It's like there's so many places that you can miss.
Yeah. And you had the joy of shooting in the rain too.
It was so much fun.
No, that's like so. Stephen, for context, I'm a news photographer. I do videography for a station where I'm at, and I'll never forget. Like Taylor's point, I'll never forget. Like one of my first days training, my chief photog was like, "Why are you shooting from the same spot?" And I was like, "But I have a zoom lens." He's like, "You got your legs too, kid." And I hike around in gear all the time, wherever I'm at and stuff like that. And like that's the biggest thing that if I could tell anyone is like just walk around. Like, and I've only been to Ohio once, and I love walking around it and stuff, and the culture that it brings and stuff like that is incredible. So I can only imagine what photography is like there.
Yeah, I was told many years ago as a photographer, and I now carry it's basically my theme for shooting. Think outside of the box photography. If somebody else is there shooting, you don't want that same picture. You got to shoot where somebody else isn't. It's almost like racing. Go where they're not.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing too, because there's such a creative component to photography that I don't think people realize. And I sure didn't have the appreciation I had before you taught me everything last year. And I was like, this is a lot harder than I thought it was. So it was cool to walk around and just be able to learn. And I will say shooting in the rain, that was fun. It was an experience, and we might maybe get one of our buddies, Rob Branding, who was not going to be able to be on the stream tonight, also a great photographer as well. And so he might have the experience of shooting in the rain tomorrow, which will be cool. So yeah, that's kind of like photography. And then like, I guess more advice from you. I know like kind of doing something different, or I'm not following the crowd with photography, but what other advice do you have for people that are just kind of starting out with photography?
Well, I mean, really when it comes to it, it's turn the camera on and shoot. Just keep shooting. It's like Dory, just keep swimming. So you're just keep running with the camera. But when it comes to motorsports photography, you can get the cars. Everybody can get the cars. They can capture that. They can capture the movements. Panning is another skill that's really is important to learn. But the most important thing that I would say 75% of photographers don't think about is lighting. How is the photo lit? How is the subject lit? Is the sun behind you? Is it backlit? Is it in front of you? Is it from the side angle? Can you darken it up to get shadows? So the creativity that you can get in motorsports just from the lighting is overwhelming. But you got to test with it. You got to take some shots. But the most important thing that a photographer can do in motorsports, get your key shots right at the beginning. Get them in practice. Get your drivers, get your cars, get them on track. And then the rest of the race, create. Because you get so many different opportunities and everybody, I mean, for like the truck race, 64 laps, you're going to have 64 times that the leader comes around and you can't take the same shot every time. But if you get them in practice, you can spend the rest of the race looking at different locations, trying to get them maybe going off the grass, get some dirt clouds behind them, all those different types of things. So it's really, you learn the lighting, learn how to work it with your camera.
Yeah, that's good advice. I will say lighting too, just for video as well. That is such a big thing to learn, and that it's so underrated. It's such an underrated thing to think through, but it is a skill. It is definitely a skill. I want to focus a little bit on the writing side. You said you do a little bit of everything, working with podium finish. So when it came to like a writing career in journalism, you said you had a journalism background from college, but how did you kind of progress as a writer as you developed through your career?
It's funny because I was just having this conversation with Rob Tianson, who is the editor at the Podium Finish. And we talk about this all the time. All of my writing has to be edited because I write the way that I talk. And for a professional writer, somebody that is doing that, the structure is completely different. So for a radio person trying to write a story in a feature presentation, the wording doesn't flow the way that it should. Yeah. So it's a struggle for me because my focus is always on talking and presenting things with a different color, a different light. So it's drawing that picture, kind of like play-by-play for any type of sport. Taylor, you've done that obviously at Bowling Green. So you understand if you're on radio, you've got to paint that picture. You've got to tell them exactly what you are seeing, how you're seeing it, and use those descriptive words. Now you use those in writing, but the way that you use them in writing is completely different.
And I think too, again, like when you peel back the layers of journalism, there's writing for broadcast, writing for print, writing for web. There's so many different pieces of writing that is totally different. And a lot of people don't realize that it is a totally different style. Like I learned writing for broadcast my senior year, and that was the focus. And it was totally different from when I learned to write an article. And again, learning through like Rob and even just working with you a little bit too, you learn how to develop those skills a little bit better. But it's true with radio and being on camera all the time, even just your voice only, you want to write like you talk. And that's really good for broadcast. But for when it's like an article, it's a lot different. So
yeah, and when I do like if I'm doing a commercial at the radio station or something or a promo, I don't necessarily write it out because if you're reading something that you've written and trying to emphasize it or talk about it and characterize it, it unfortunately comes across very straight and very bland. So I don't always write that. I will read a lot of scripts just from bullet points and then put my own wording into it to give it that color.
That's the way to go. Because again, like if you're reading like straight off of a script, it's going to sound like you're reading straight off of a script. There's no personality behind it. And there might be with your writing, but otherwise, no, that's a good piece of advice too. If you want to do like radio or even just podcasting too, bullet points, do not paragraph it out. I've learned the hard way. I think we've all learned the hard way that way. I want to get to some audience questions. I see them in here. Let's see. My mouse will work. Heels Rule asked you, Stephen, what did you think of the radio style broadcast? Would you like to see more? You have opinions on this?
Yeah, I've got an opinion on that. I do not want to see more personally. I love Mike Bagley. Absolutely love Mike Bagley. He is one of the best in the business. Unfortunately, radio style broadcasting, like I was talking about earlier, is a completely different presentation. So if you're talking about something, you're trying to do the play by play, but you're watching it on TV. So it's different. I like Mike's calls that he puts in there, a lot of emphasis. Problem is Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Burton.
Mm-hmm.
I love the guys. Don't get me wrong. Great racers, Hall of Famers, deserve all the accolades that they get. But especially with Junior, sometimes he will carry on sentences way too long.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dale Jr. is a walking run-on sentence. I love Junior.
Oh yeah.
But he does this. He does that. He will carry on and way too long, and his descriptions of things are a little weird. And so Junior is a great analyst, but he's not a radio style broadcaster. So I think they've got an idea. It's a good idea, but I think if you're going to do radio style, you do it with radio people.
Yeah.
I agree 100%, especially with Junior being Mr. Gift of Gab. It's a different kind of gab. I'd rather hear Mike Bagley talk radio style than have a broadcaster try to do radio style.
Yeah.
It definitely does show.
And that's like my thing. Like I grew up like the channels. I didn't have the channels that had racing. I sat in my dad's truck and listened to Joe Moore and Barney Hall call races in that stock Ford Ranger radio, and like there's such a different style between it. And I feel like they've kind of emphasized that on NBC this year because they brought in Kim Kuhn, who has the MRN background as well, and they tend to do that with a lot of the MRN people. But I feel like if you're going to do that, you need to bring a radio crew in and actually do it right. So
yeah, I agree. And even if you swapped them out, you brought some of the PRN guys in to do some broadcasts, and then you do a couple of the other MRN or even the IMS radio from Indianapolis for it, especially like if you do the Roval. Because the IMS team works at the Roval with PRN. So I think there's a lot of options there for NBC to do that. It's fun. It's different, but they have the wrong people in there.
Yeah. I think if we have a chance to do it over for the Roval, maybe take that into consideration, NBC, perhaps. Maybe, hopefully.
Well, yeah, I wish they would listen to me, but unfortunately, NBC does not send me a paycheck.
Fair.
Bingo.
Let's see. Next question from John Jensen. John says, Steven, is there a track that you haven't been to that you would like to do camera shots for?
Yes. And one of those would be Homestead, Miami.
Whew, yeah.
I love the racing at Homestead. Unfortunately, that is like a 1,600-mile trip for me, and I drive to racetracks. So that's a little far off. I'm actually looking forward to, and I would love to be out there for it when Fontana becomes a short track. I am looking forward to the short track in Fontana. That is another one that I would love to go to.
So you just like palm trees then?
There must be something to that. That's a very good observation.
It's the warm weather.
There is that too.
The non-Ohio weather, just anywhere but here, would be nice any time of year. But yeah, I think a Homestead would be a really good one to shoot at. That has some of my favorite photos come from there or Talladega for me, just because I just love the scenes there.
Talladega was so much fun to shoot earlier this year. That was one of my, unfortunately, my luck is, let me put it plain, sucks. Because the two biggest accidents, I had just left those corners to go shoot at the opposite end.
No.
Yes. Yeah. So I was when they had the big one with Tyler Reddick flipping there in turn 4. I was at the start finish line.
No, God, that's the worst.
Yeah.
So I have a question. You said this term earlier, and I understand it, but for maybe people watching, you said like tracks are fun and good to shoot at. Like, what does it take for you to have a fun track to shoot at or a fun shoot to have? Because I have my own definition of it. So what is it for you that makes shooting at a track fun? Like, what do you look for?
to make it fun, you mean?
Fun or good,
You
or
said?
whatever.
Well, the simplest answer for that to that for me, show up. And truly, when I get to the racetrack, I'm already having fun. It doesn't if it's raining. I worked Mid Ohio about 7 years ago, and it rained all weekend. I was wet for 3 days. I had to throw my shoes away because I was so wet. So that's still fun to me. To be at the racetrack for anything, it's fun. But when it comes down to it, if you can get a shot, you've got something just amazing. It's colorful, it's action packed, and you share that, you post it, it's used somewhere, and you get the driver's reaction from it, or you get fans' reaction to it. That makes my entire weekend. For them to be able to see something that maybe they may not have seen before. When I get I posted a photo of Will Power from Indianapolis, and he was just putting his hat on, and he just looked like he was intense and he was ready to go. He commented on that and said, absolutely love that. Perfect shot. Alexander Rossi, standing next to his pit box. He's got his helmet on, got the visor down, just buttoning up. Shared that with him, got a lot of likes from it, and he's reacted to it as well. So a lot of those types of things really mean a lot to me, especially if I'm not getting paid for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something you mentioned it too. That's something that I've started noticing too is, yes, you're shooting cars on racetracks, but you're also shooting drivers in their natural habitat, being on pit road and stuff like that. Because that's something I went and did still photography at Nashville for ARCA earlier this year, and I made it a goal of mine. I was like, I'm going to experiment more on pit road and like get drivers and crews as they're working. And that's a whole different culture now. Stuff that brings, like, I got several different ARCA drivers like, hey, like, can you send me that photo? I would love to use it, or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, it really is, and that's something cool. Now, with so many of the licensed photographers, if you're at the racetrack and you see them with the orange vest, those are the ones that are working with the teams. They're working with the drivers specifically. Now, for NASCAR, you're not going to ever get a driver saying, hey, can I have that? Very rarely, I will say. Very rarely will they come and say, hey, can I use that picture for something? But it's happened. Ryan Blaney being one of those, used one of our photographer's shots from last year or 2 years ago, while he was just standing in the garage and everything was dark except for him. Amazing shot. And he took it and saved it, used it as his Instagram profile photo. So you have some of those on occasions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of kind of previewing things moving forward, let's talk Mid Ohio, talking about ARCA Truck. Steven, from your perspective, what is the trickiest part of the track? Where do you see these drivers struggling a bit more, just from what you've seen?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges for drivers at Mid Ohio is the blind corners. This blind corners than any other racetrack they head to. You get up to turn number one. Turn number one is right there underneath the bridge. It's a left-hander, which is going to be challenging for some because it's got brand new asphalt, and this will be the first time that they face that. So I mentioned that to Zane Smith this morning when I was talking to him. He was like, "Oh, I had no idea that was down." So I'm going to have to reevaluate that. So that's going to be a challenge for him. At the top of the hill and the keyhole in turn number two, that's uphill, blind, off camber, and you can get into a lot of trouble there if you get in there 2 or 3 wide, which is easy to do because you're racing up a 1,500-foot straightaway.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the key areas. But also turn number 4. If you watch the IndyCar race, you saw Elio Castroneves or Simon Pagenaud flip right there. And that's at the exit of turn number 4, trying to make that right-hand turn, going from 160, 70, 80 miles an hour down to about 65 to make that corner. So that's a big trouble spot. And then also over in front of me in turn number 9 is it's also, you come up over the hill blind and you're turning into an off-camber corner. And if you get on the throttle too early as you crest the hill, you're spinning out. Saw it last year. Justin Marks spun out and wrecked there last year, and a couple other drivers. So very easy to get in trouble into several places this racetrack.
And looking forward, who do you feel like, based off of what we saw last year, who do you think is going to struggle, and who do you think will kind of excel going into these races?
The rookies are going to struggle. Any of the rookies are going to struggle. And I talked to Ty Majeski this afternoon, and last year was his first time there. He said he had to reevaluate the way that he drove at Mid-Ohio. This track presents a lot of different problems. You think you can go faster through one corner than maybe you really should be, and it looks, hey, I can get through there about this speed. Oh, no, you can't. Here comes the gravel pit. So I think a lot of them. Majeski, actually, I think he's also going to struggle again this year. Second year, even though ThorSport, very fast. Ben Rhodes is another one I don't think is going to fare well here. He struggled last year here at Mid-Ohio. He talked about it as being a track that he's okay with. And if he can come out of here with a top 10 finish, it's like a win for him. Mm-hmm. On the other end of that, there's one driver, only one. And every driver I've talked to over the last week has said his name, Zane Smith.
Yeah.
He was the one that was able to challenge Parker Klingerman last year. Klingerman's obviously not in this race. So Zane Smith is the guy to look at and really kind of run away with this. But Mid-Ohio can bite you in an instant and send you to the back of the field, and it's a struggle to pass. Mm-hmm. Every driver's talked about it being a hard place to pass. If you're looking for a surprise, Christian Eckes. I think Eckes is one that can really he ran fifth last year in this race. He ran up in the top 5 for most of the race. I think he is another one that could jump up there, maybe even challenge Zane Smith. So I look at Eckes, Smith, also Grant Enfinger could be another strong one. I mean, a super road course racer. So I would say those are the top 3 that you need to look at this weekend.
And then for ARCA, any expectations for ARCA, or are we just watching and learning a little bit for them?
I think ARCA is ARCA. It really is. But I mean, if they can get through here with less than 6 cautions, I think we had a good race.
Yep.
But this is one drivers will get into this race for ARCA and really kind of it's a test.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're trying to see learning the road courses for hopefully a chance to move up next year. So ARCA can put on a good race, but I think you've got a couple guys at the front of the field that are probably going to dominate this.
Yeah. I cover ARCA for TobyChristie.com, and that's kind of how I felt going into this too. Was you got your top 2 guys, the 18 and the 20, and that's probably going to be a slam dunk. Yeah. Maybe Gus Dean shows up because it's a Venturini car, but it's going to be those 2, and that's it. So
yeah, Venturini's dominated the season already, and I would be surprised if it's not one of those cars, as you said, the 18 or the 20. I think that who's in that 20? I forgot. Right,
Jesse Love.
Jesse Love. Love was fast at this track last year. I talked to him before last year's race, and he actually enjoys Mid-Ohio. He enjoys the challenges of sliding around, and that's one of the things that this racetrack presents. So if he's not in victory lane, I'd be shocked.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like it might be a weekend, a veterans type of weekend for those who have been around a little longer. Stephen, we cannot thank you enough for joining us. It's been great to hear your insight a little bit more about your career. Where can we find you social media-wise so people can follow you there?
I'm on Facebook. I've got my personal Facebook page, which is Stephen Conley 24. I'm also on Instagram. What is my Instagram page? Steve Conley, and also SEC Imaging, which is my photo company. You can find me on Instagram under SEC Imaging, and now on Threads as SEC Imaging. Yep. So I joined Threads yesterday, and really enjoying that. So Twitter has gone by for me, and Threads is now the same.
Honestly, that's a whole other conversation we got to have with Threads. if you don't have Threads yet, maybe get it. It's actually pretty neat. But yeah, to follow Stephen there. Stephen, again, thank you so much, and we'll see you at Mid-Ohio.
We look forward to it. I'll be there at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Perfect. We'll see you then. Thanks.
All right. See you guys. Bye.
Stephen.
It's always good to hear his insight. He's so knowledgeable about literally just everything.
Yeah.
So I enjoy talking to him. So I appreciate his time. And yeah, it's going to be an early morning for everybody involved. But that's 7:00. My God, that's ridiculous. But yeah, speaking of Threads, Adam doesn't have a Thread account.
I'm not threading yet.
You don't have to. It's fine. No peer pressure. Ben and I do. So follow us there. But yeah, I guess we should probably, because it's, that time, we should probably look at our point standings from after last week at Chicago. Let's see if I can pull this up a little bit larger. There we go. All right, so point standings. Dom is still leading the point standings, but I ended up winning this past weekend by a sheer luck. We have a cutoff. Yeah. We have a cutoff time for when our points get turned in, just to keep all fairness. And Ben would have won. He picked Shane to win. So, oops. But you know what? That's okay. We'll get him this weekend. Ben,
you invite me to your house after this happens. So
we love you, Ben. But
the beautiful thing is I've cut the gap down. I'm less than 100. Less than 50 away from Ben now.
Yeah.
Let's go.
You're getting closer. We're close, and of course, when the playoffs start, we kind of reset the points. We just keep our playoff points, or the flags that are on the screen are kind of our playoff points there. So still a long ways to go, but let's preview Atlanta. I'm pretty sure that's the next slide I have on here. Yes. So to Hot Atlanta, 260 laps, 400 miles. The track is 1.54 miles long. I can read. I swear I don't have my glasses on. That's why, but I just misspoke. So stages 1 and 2, 60 laps for stage 1, and then stages 2 and 3 are 100 laps each. And then we have our driver stats to look at. So Elliott was the one that won this race last year, the most recent race that we had, 2022. The spring, though, Joey Logano won. So one of 2 Ford wins this year came from Atlanta. So maybe we see them do well this year. Kevin Harvick, of course, has the most wins of any active driver at this track with 3. And then we have our best average finishes since 2020 and our best overall average finishes at this track. Obviously, the repave, keep that in mind. That overall finish doesn't keep that in mind, but keep it in mind for yourself. So kind of everything we got going on here. I see we have Dom joining the chat. Hello. So
I didn't realize Ford's only won 2 races this year till now. I forgot.
Yeah, Blaney and Logano. And they've been
slow, but I thought, wow, that's.
So it's interesting. I mean, so we got an interesting weekend ahead at Atlanta, just because I think this could be Ford's time to make a comeback. I think as well. I mean, we're going to see our guys that are generally, great at some super speedway type of racing do well at this new Atlanta configuration. Yeah. So I guess looking in on it, we like to hold our predictions until they come out on Sunday, but any inkling as to who we would like to see do well, who we think could have a shot at maybe a surprise winner, a dark horse? I
mean, you kind of just said it. Like when I think restrictor plate racing, or excuse me, super speedway racing now. I'm dating myself. Gosh, I think a lot of the Ford camp, Logano, Brad Keselowski, for instance.
Bringing this in, Brad Keselowski.
Yeah, Brad. Yeah, like you think these guys that kind of Ford has cornered. They've had speed on these high bank tracks for a while. I could see Ford having a strong weekend just because it's one of those things. But
yeah,
I'll go for a dark horse. Dark horse. I think Conley. They're gonna keep that momentum from Chicago.
Okay.
I'll take either Haley or his father Allmendinger.
That's my favorite joke in the garage.
It's so good.
It's so beautiful too. Either them or even look out for Daniel Suarez.
Yeah. Can Trackhouse make it 3 in a row?
If they can make it 3 in a row, that might be a whole new record of having every one of their cars win back to back to back, right?
Yeah, it would be. I think
sounds like it. Hey, sounds good to me.
Yeah. So, and then of course Dom's going to chime in and say TRD is knocking at the door.
Especially, you can never count on Denny Hamlin on these situations.
No, I mean he's so good at these tracks. He knows the right time to strike, when to hold back, and even to the sense that I think Brad and him, or like Brad Keselowski and Denny Hamlin, have to go to the back of the pack when things start to get dicey. They know when to bail. And sometimes that'll work out for you at the end of the race, and sometimes you bail for no reason and you're not able to get back up to the front. So it's a risk, but it's a risk that they're willing to take because they know how to get back through the field. But we had a whole Brad Keselowski show last week where we wore our Brad merch, and I think hopefully, and I could jinx myself on this, but that was a sign of good things to come for Brad and that 6 team.
I missed out on that. I missed out on a lot.
Adam wore like the old Keselowski merch, and I
had the 2 gear.
Yeah, you had the 2 gear.
2017 midnight throwback at Darlington.
Amazing.
I even have the original team hat
which kills me. I'm so jealous about that.
Yeah, it's OG. It's old.
I will say too, Dom brings up a good point. Kyle Busch was awfully good in the spring.
Chevys always have a game plan. All manufacturers do, but it feels like Chevy is one that is always organized to the T's.
And two, if we go back to Ford, McDowell could be another dark horse pick.
Dark horse.
So
well, yes, the course will be dark. It's a night race. Don't forget that.
Yeah, that's what I love about this. It is a night race at Atlanta.
Okay, but
I'm dreaming of it.
Those races from like the 2010s where it was a night race at Atlanta with the COTs on like old Atlanta.
Oh,
that's the hottest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh. Take me back to the good old days.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited. I've said for literally since I became a fan, I'm like, we need to have a summer night series. It just feels right. And especially with temperatures just getting hotter and me not being able to take it, it just makes sense.
I mean, it's what SRX does, Saturday night short tracking. Like it's what we need. That's what if this TV deal comes together with Amazon where they got to stream 6 races like TNT used to, they need to be all summer Saturday night races wherever they're at.
And I love racing on Saturday nights. And now I know, because I posted this a while ago too, where I'm like, NASCAR Cup Series should just have a summer Saturday night series, but that they do like 6 weekends and that's it. And then everyone was like, well, local short tracks. You don't want to impede on their thunder, which I totally get too, but I just love when the Cup Series races on Saturday nights. I just love it because Sunday nights, Monday's a work day. It's a lot. And then I know these drivers and they all have work too, but still, that's what I think of. But
it's why the Bristol night race is so special.
Yes.
That's just a banger of a weekend and it's so much fun. And then you get Sunday to recover from all the partying.
Yeah, the vibes are different on a Saturday night. Any night race, it's different. Like when the Truck Series races, I mean, they usually race at night, but still, those vibes are so good. Xfinity, when they race at night, always a fun time. I will say, at Charlotte, when they had to finish their race during the evening, that was actually really fun. Not a lot of people stayed for that or were able to be there, but that was such a good time. So, yeah.
It used to always be a night race when it was the Busch Series.
Yes.
This one goes to Dom.
Dom,
wherever you're at, baby.
Yeah, bring back the Busch Series, man. Bring it back. Rebrand it to Busch, honestly. But yeah, so we'll see. Atlanta, it'll be a fun weekend of racing for sure. Truck Series races on a Saturday, so be wary of that. It's not Friday. They race on a Saturday. Mid-Ohio, Truck and ARCA, and then Atlanta will be Cup and Xfinity. So we'll just show with y'all this weekend, get you all some good content from Mid-Ohio. We'll also cover you in and fill you in on Atlanta. I'm talking and I don't know what words are coming out of my mouth, but that has been the ATYL live stream for this Thursday night. So thank you all so much for joining us. Of course, our social media handles are on the screen for you. So check out all the accounts, but also make sure to follow us, if you don't know, at @TaylorKitchen_ on Twitter and TikTok, and then above below line on Instagram, Threads, that's different, YouTube, and Facebook, and of course, TobyChristie.com on all social media platforms, and the full-length episodes of ATYL come out every Monday, and they're on your favorite podcasting platforms and on YouTube. And guys, by the way, the video that we did on Monday did the best it's ever done. It's 2.8K views. That's crazy. So thank you all who watched it. I appreciate your support. That's crazy, but crazy. Follow us. Follow us. Special guest Ted joining us to sign off. Also great to have Ben here. Thanks, Ben, for coming to Ohio.
Thanks for leaving your house.
Of course. So Adam, thanks for joining us. The ATYL team signing off for now. We will talk to you guys on the internet this weekend. And of course, as always, we will see you all next time. Love you all. Thank you for the support and bye.